it's going to be a big week for the African Development Bank Group. It's going to elect its new leadership in Abidjan, and that's in Côte d'Ivoire. South Africa has endorsed Bajabulile, Swazi, Tshabalala. Khayelihle Khumalo, as I tell you, is in Abidjan and joins us now for an update. Kaya, good afternoon. So it's going to be a massive week. How is it looking in terms of the new leadership and the contest of who will lead the African Development Bank?
Well, certainly, Tula says we've seen quite a massive lobbying by these candidates, about 5 of them. And we do know that South Africa has thrown its weight behind Ms. Tshabalala. In fact, President Cyril Ramaphosa says Ms. Tshabalala has got the know-how. She's a former vice president at the African Development Bank. But you do have also another candidate from Southern Africa. That's Mr. Samuel Mambo from Zambia. And he used to work for the World Bank, Tula. And this has really almost created a rift within the SADC bloc, where you do have South Africa backing its own candidates, but also Zambia itself. But it's been really a very interesting couple of weeks. I mean, you look at the recent Africa CEO Forum that was held here in Abidjan, where President Ramaphosa was in attendance. And of course, Ms. Tshabalala sees the opportunity, pushing a campaign trail as well in terms of the lobbying, but a very key institution for the continent, Tula sees, especially in light of a very tough global environment. You look at those tariffs that were announced by the United States of America, quite a bulk of countries in the continent as well being affected, albeit to the pause in terms of the implementation of those tariffs. But this has really created quite a massive uncertainty. So the theme around this particular meeting is around the mobilization of the domestic resources in the continent for Africa to withstand all these shocks in terms of the current situation. But a monumental task for this financial institution, Tula says. We know that when it comes to the continent, a number of countries are battling in terms of servicing their debts. You look at those Bretton Woods institutes. A number of African countries really are facing quite a massive challenge to that effect.
Yeah, so located then as an institution for us, the AfDB, within the architecture of African institutions, many of them born out of originally the Organization for African Unity, but later on within the context of the AU and those winds of the African Renaissance that we're talking about, the approach no longer being about aid, but partnership and trade.
Well, very much so, Tula says. As you know, that we saw from the US cutting off that aid, affecting quite a number of countries. So this is one of the very key internal instruments in Africa for the continent to build its own resources. One of the major issues is around climate change. I mean, you're right, in Abidjan, it's baking hot. So the issue of making sure that African countries are able to develop, but in the manner that is very much compliant with the issues pertaining to climate change, but also in terms of dealing with a number of socioeconomic challenges facing the continent, Tula says. I mean, quite an indictment for the African continent, where you have 600 million people still without access to electricity. So an institution like the African Development Bank has been very much instrumental in making sure that they power up Africa, but also looking at issues around food security for the African continent. And where we're positioned, Tula says, it's a very ideal location, because one of the major beneficiaries of the loans, the concessional loans from the African Development Bank, is Côte d'Ivoire. So the issue of infrastructure is very, very key, Tula says. So you talk about African continental free trade area for those goods to move from right in Abidjan, a very important area here in West Africa, Tula says, especially for those landlocked countries like Mali and also Burkina Faso. So we just had a tour around here in Côte d'Ivoire, really looking at the infrastructure, the bridges, the roads, in terms of easing up the congestion. As you know, that they need to move the goods from the ports of Abidjan to those landlocked countries. So this particular financial institution playing a very pivotal role in terms of opening up the highways and really just making sure that they also tackle the issues of unemployment, because that's one of the very massive challenges facing the African continent, Cesare.
Let's leave it there. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out and whether or not regional politics comes into any of it as the African Development Bank Group chooses its leadership. Khayelihle Khumalo there will keep you updated on that story.